Finally, Moana 2 premiered, and the movie is receiving mixed reviews. Some fans say it's terrible, while others think it's decent. But who is right? We'll find out. Today on Charlietales, we will analyze the good and the bad of the movie, and draw conclusions at the end. As always, a spoiler warning, so consider yourselves warned. Ready? Let's begin. My first positive point is the maturity of the story. Moana 2 takes place 3 years after the first movie. Moana is no longer a teenager. She is now a 19-year-old woman, respected by everyone in the village. This detail changes the story's perspective, presenting a more mature protagonist, and the story takes advantage of this to give more seriousness to the events. The plot tells us that many years ago, a god named Nalo created a curse to separate the villages from the sea. With this curse active, the islands cannot contact each other. If the curse is not broken, the people of Motunui will inevitably go extinct. So, once again, Moana must embark on a journey to save her people. At first glance, the plot seems similar to the first movie, but the director approaches the story differently. This time Moana is an adult, which makes her face this challenge differently. Moana is now afraid of the unknown and terrified of the risk of losing her family. From the start, the movie establishes that this mission has a high chance of failure, and if that happens, she will die. I'm not saying that there weren't any dangers in the first movie. Clearly, Moana almost died several times in that story. However, at that time, she was a young girl acting impulsively, unaware of the true danger. She wanted to save her people, but deep down, she started her adventure for herself. She had the desire to leave the island. She did it for herself. The movie was quite fun overall, because it entirely relied on that youthful idea. On the other hand, in Moana 2, the protagonist is pressured by her responsibilities. This time she doesn't travel for the desire for adventure. She does it because everyone counts on her. The entire village has faith in Moana. There's no one else capable of saving them. In Moana 2, there are several moments reminding us of the mission's risk. For example, halfway through the movie, one of Moana's friends almost dies, and Moana feels guilty because she is the captain. The movie shows this idea's peak at the end. In the final battle, Moana sacrifices herself to save the island of Modufetu. She literally accepts death to fulfill her mission. This shows how the character has matured. Let's remember Moana's greatest fear was never seeing her family again, yet she accepted death to complete the mission. Both movies share the same basic idea, but the approach is different, and it shows. I believe this is the strongest point of the movie. Unfortunately, this idea fades many times because the story constantly brings comedy to the screen. If they had focused entirely on Moana's maturity, the film would have likely been better. Now let's move on to my negative points about the story. My first negative point is the secondary characters. This movie presents a difference from the first story. This time, Moana embarks on the adventure with a group of new friends. The muscular friend, the engineer, and the grumpy old man. These three are presented as support for the mission. Initially, I thought the idea was good. It makes sense to change the formula from the previous movie. Without these characters, Moana 2 would be a copy of the first film, with Moana and Maui solving the plot alone. Using these characters to vary the formula was a good idea, but the execution is quite mediocre. These characters hardly contribute anything. The movie doesn't give them time to shine, and they have no character arcs. The muscular guy starts as a Maui fanboy, and ends the story the same way, with no change. The engineer girl starts as a capable, confident woman, and ends the story the same way. The old man is a special case. He starts as a grumpy character, and later becomes more cheerful. Good. But this development practically has no reason. A couple of songs played, and he started smiling. End. We don't know where his initial bitterness came from, or why he is now happy. We can only assume he caught the joy. Regarding their usefulness in the adventure, they all feel incompetent. The only valuable one was the engineer. In the final battle, she helped when Moana's boat was destroyed. This girl immediately created a new version of the boat, capable of reaching high speeds. Here she contributed a lot, but it's almost the only scene where she's shown. Without this, she would have been as useless as the others. Throughout the movie, the three are just falling and escaping. There's no character development at all. It's long been known that this movie was actually going to be a Disney Plus series. And it shows. It shows a lot. It's clear this story was meant to last longer. If it were a series, they would have had several episodes to better develop these secondary characters. But adapting it to a movie format meant limited time, and a lot had to be cut. This is very evident in the secondary characters, who ended up empty and practically filler. A real shame because they were an excellent idea. This leads us to the second negative point, the weakness of the script. The script of Moana 2 has many weak points, filled with poorly executed or incomplete ideas. For example, in the final battle, Maui loses his tattoos and powers fighting against Nalo. However, seconds later, he gets them back. Why take away his powers if they are given back so quickly? The idea of Maui losing his powers is good. It's a significant sacrifice, but it feels super useless if it lasts no time. Also, the movie doesn't set the stage for this big moment. It happens out of nowhere. What do I mean by setting the stage? Let me explain by analyzing the previous movie. In Moana 1, they also used the resource of Maui losing his powers, but it was better done. The first half focused on showing how useless Maui felt without his magic hook. In the middle of the story, the hook was almost broken, and Maui literally said, "Without my hook, I am nothing." The film clearly established that Maui didn't feel important without his powers. This idea set the stage for the grand finale, where Maui sacrifices his hook to stop Teika and save Moana. That was well written. Maui was a man who only wanted to regain his demigod power, but in the end, he was willing to sacrifice everything for his only friend. Powerful message and well developed. In Moana 2, this doesn't happen. The character has no personal development arc. We never get any preparation for the grand sacrifice at the end. The idea of Maui losing his powers is repeated from the first movie, but executed worse. Again, it's clear this was going to be a series. Maui probably had a character arc that had to be cut for theaters. The movie is pretty weak in terms of risks. No one dies, no one permanently loses their powers, and everything is resolved magically. Moana dies, but is revived by magic, and that's it. Moreover, the story doesn't even have a great villain. The movie presents Nalo, the god of storms. An interesting villain, but we never see him on screen. He's not the real enemy of the story, and it shows. Moana and her friends fight Nalo's curse, not him. This is very boring. A mediocre movie can be saved with a great villain, but a mediocre movie without a villain has no defense. I understand they are saving Nalo for Moana 3, but that takes away everything interesting from Moana 2. Nalo's storm could have been enough of a villain for a series, but for a movie, it's disappointing. In conclusion, Moana 2 is an entertaining movie. It's good for passing the time, and if you want to see a new Moana adventure, this movie works. But honestly, the story is mediocre, and constantly fails. It feels too much like a series that was cut to become a movie. The writing has many weak points that can't be hidden. It's not a movie I can recommend. That's all for today. If you liked the video, you'd really help me out by leaving a like. That would be legendary. Also, remember to subscribe to see more videos like this. Thanks for listening. My name is Charlie, and I'll see you in the future.